Welcome to another episode of Scott Reads Comics. Like and subscribe. Today we'll be covering X-Men Classic number 73, reprinting X-Men 169. Now, this was printed in 1992. As I said, it's a reprint of X-Men 169, which would have been published in 1983 with a May publishing date of 1983. In that time in 1983, it was one of the first X-Men issues that I had purchased off the rack. I'd read some X-Men that I'd gotten in 3-packs at various stores. My parents had got them for me, including 153 and a few others, which I'll eventually cover on the show. But this is the one that I first bought for myself with grass cutting money for 60 cents. And here we have the X-Men Classic reprint, again, 1992. By this time, the title has transitioned from Classic X-Men to X-Men Classic. There's pretty much no longer any additional material in this. That's pretty much morphed into a straight-up X-Men reprint title, which is fine. The extra material was nice, but I would say not essential. And let's dive in and take a look. First, this cover representation is, I believe, an Adam Hughes cover. He had started doing covers. They got some really great cover artists to do new covers for these old X-Men stories. And so we have, I think, Adam Hughes doing a lovely cover of X-Men Classic here with Nightcrawler teleporting in against, fighting against Callisto, who we'll see in the story has kidnapped Angel. This is our first real introduction to the Morlocks. And they'll play much larger in X-Men continuity as the years would go on, including the dreaded Mutant Massacre storyline. Corner box here, we have Art Adams, Floating Heads, Gorgeous, Cyclops, Colossus, Storm, Wolverine, Professor X, and Nightcrawler. So away we go. This issue, as we're going to see when we look at the credits, is a Paul Smith extravaganza. I believe Paul Smith, Bob Wycheck, and of course written by Claremont, but we'll take a look at those credits in a moment. Here we have that classic establishing shot, not a true splash page yet, but this cool establishing shot that Paul Smith would become famous for this long vertical panel, and he did it quite a bit in his tenure, his too short tenure on the X-Men. Candy Southern, Warren Worthington, the Angel, the high-flying Angel, X-Man. She's come home to their New York apartment to find something is amiss. Taking the elevator upstairs, she sees some feathers. You molting lover, she asks, and we turn the page, and she finds blood mixed in with the feathers. So she definitely knows that something is amiss. So she goes for the phone. By the time the police reach me, I could be dead. I need someone better. Thank heaven for this automatic dialer. I blanked on his number, and my phone book's in my purse. Come on, Professor, be there. Answer me, please. And then she hears footsteps. Charles Xavier speaking. We see Professor Xavier is up doing some light reading. Little joke here with the Marvel Universe. He's probably reading the official handbook of the Marvel Universe in this hardbound volume he has in bed with him. Professor, it's Candy Southern. I'm at Warren's in my Manhattan penthouse. He's been attacked. Suddenly, Candy Southern realizes she's about to be attacked, and we have our splash page at last, and it is a doozy. We see just beautifully rendered the arm of one of the Morlocks, and he says, "I am Sunder. I am here to hurt you." And boy, as a kid, this was just frightening and so cool. And every Paul Smith page it's like an animation cell. It's so good. I mean, it's just so gorgeously rendered and presented, and the whole team was just going great guns on this. And speaking of that, our title is Catacombs. The writer, Chris Claremont, penciler, Paul Smith. Bob Wycheck is the inker, Bob Sharon, colorist, Tom Warzachowski, letterer, Louise Jones, editor, Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. And we have added here on the end, Kelly Corvese is our reprint editor. So what's about to happen to Candy Southern? Nothing good. Turn the page, and we see Nightcrawler in a little intimate setting with his sorceress girlfriend, Amanda Sefton. Nightcrawler had, by this time, established a romantic relationship with Amanda, whose mother is a powerful interdimensional sorceress, and she is part-time sorcerer and airline stewardess. So they're enjoying a night of intimacy in this hot tub when Professor Xavier flashes in with a request for Nightcrawler's assistance. Nightcrawler, ever being the gallant, teleports away in a couple of jumps across town almost immediately, and he sees, from his ability to cling to the side of this building down onto the street, a shadowed figure carrying Angel into the subway. "I see him, sir. He's being carried into that subway entrance. Professor, what about Candy? Is she all right?" Well, we're about to find out. And this is an amazing Paul Smith, Bob Wychick panel here. Do you see the skyline? You see Nightcrawler clinging to this vertical surface and exploding from the window of their penthouse, Candy Southern. Obviously not all right. Nightcrawler rescues her, comes back, and Paul Smith excels at drawing beautiful people, gorgeous men, gorgeous women, and just the way he's able to sort of subtly hide the nudity here of Amanda Sefton as Crawler comes back and drops the cold and injured Candy Southern into the hot water of the hot tub because she's probably suffering from hypothermia as well as whatever other injuries have been inflicted on her. "Kurt, don't you dare!" But he does. Meanwhile, we have a subplot brewing here. We cut away to the Hellfire Club, and as a kid, just picking this up off the rack for the first time, I didn't know who any of these people were. But Claremont does do a nice job of introducing new characters and treating each issue of X-Men as if it might have been that reader's first issue. So while I was a bit lost, I still felt a little bit anchored to these characters because there was enough exposition here. And I'll just read a brief example. Unlike that team of outlaw heroes, however, he has little interest in using those powers for his race's benefit. As leader of the club's ultra-secret inner circle, his ultimate goal is nothing less than dominion over the entire world. He considers the X-Men the deadliest threat to that ambition. So here in one establishing panel with a few captions, Claremont establishes Sebastian Shaw as a very dire threat to the X-Men. He comes back to the Hellfire Club. He was called by Tessa, who is his expert aide-de-camp. And she's rather provocatively dressed, but that is the nature of the Hellfire Club here. And beautifully drawn again and colored here. Just exquisite artwork. And we see them walking into a room and they find none other than Emma Frost, powerful mutant telepath, also foe of the X-Men, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. She has been incapacitated by some unknown assailant and is in a catatonic state. Who could take this powerful telepath and render her unconscious like this and unresponsive? It's difficult to say. We can only speculate at this point. In mid-sentence, she collapsed. I've examined her and diagnosed her condition as total catatonic schizophrenia, a withdrawal from reality so complete it borders on living death. Her psionic defenses were formidable. To overcome them so quickly would require an antagonist of phenomenal strength and skill. So here we have a situation where she has been overwhelmed by some powerful force, and we are not sure what the nature of that force is, and we will have to wait another issue to find that out. Turn the page. We have the X-Men now summoned to Amanda's apartment to check on the fate of Candy Southern. Here she is. She has recovered thanks to Amanda Sefton's sorceress ministrations. She was able to whip up some kind of potion to get Candy back into the land of the conscious. And they're trying to figure out what their next move is. And Amanda Sefton, not being a stranger to combat, says, Storm, I'd like to help you if you'll have me. Your offer is appreciated, Amanda. I would rather you stay with Candy in case Angel's kidnappers make another try at her. So here we have Amanda offering to help, but Storm says stay behind, guard Candy Southern. Among the X-Men here, we have Kitty Pryde and her Dragon Lockheed, Nightcrawler, of course, now in uniform, Colossus, and Storm. Conspicuous by their absence are Cyclops and Wolverine. Cyclops is away from the team at this point, and Wolverine is also away on a temporary leave. And he's in Japan. And those events, occurs sort of around the time of the events of the first Wolverine limited series, that groundbreaking one with Frank Miller and Chris Claremont. Storm telepathically contacts Professor X, who has a link with all the X-Men. And she's here requesting if they might use Wolfsbane, a member of the New Mutants, to help them track down their missing comrade, ex-comrade, the Angel. And Professor X says, no, the New Mutants are not, they're not field operatives. They're merely students, and he doesn't want to put them in any danger. They are just the same age as Kitty, but Kitty's been with the X-Men and through many battles, and so she is considered a full-fledged X-Man for purposes of going on missions. Pretty cool uniform Kitty sporting in these issues too. I always like this. She didn't really wear it much after this, but it is neat to see her in it here. And she is chafing at her Sprite, her code name of Sprite. Later she would briefly have the code name of Ariel, and finally I think settle on Shadowcat, although really most people just refer to her as Kitty or Kitty Pryde. So the X-Men are getting ready to follow the trail. They have a portable Cerebro tracking device, which is that techno gadget that lets people find mutants based on their unique DNA signature. So this one is calibrated to Angel, and they're going to use that. Kitty has Lockheed, again beautifully drawn by Paul Smith here, stay behind too with Amanda. Don't worry, Kitty. My mom taught me all about the care and feeding of dragons. Kitty met Lockheed last issue in issue 168. He mysteriously showed up. He may be an alien, interdimensional being. At this point, it's unclear. And he helped Kitty against some alien alien hunters who had invaded the mansion in the previous issue. So here now we have the X-Men in this subway, ready to descend even deeper into those nether regions below the New York subway system. And just a tremendous panel here. We have Storm fretting over her long fight with claustrophobia. And being underground only makes that worse, because she remembers as she was buried alive as a child after an explosion in Cairo. So that feeling of claustrophobia has stayed with her whole life. But she's gonna gut through it, because Angel is an X-Man, and X-Men take care of their own. So transitioning further, they're digging deeper, trying to find Angel's trail, following what Cerebro, the trail that Cerebro is laying out for them. And here we have a lovely example, sort of a shorter Paul Smith long panel. This doesn't go the length of the page, but again, the way he employs these long panels to show depth of field and positioning of characters is really brilliant. And it really does just wonderfully help tell the story and move the action along. He's an excellent layout artist, in addition to being a brilliant figure artist. And again, it's displayed here in this panel as the X-Men are continuing down these stairs. You can see these menacing hands, and suddenly, intruders, get them! The X-Men are attacked by a motley crew of vagabonds. And here, Colossus in his armored form weighs 500 pounds, and so the force of these assailants and his own weight break this railing, and he goes crashing to the ground. Storm takes to the air. It is a strain using my elemental powers underground, but at least this gallery is large enough for me to generate sufficient wind to fly. So here's Kitty using some of her combat skills she's gained from training, giving this guy the business here, Bop. Colossus hurls this guy away. Your concern is admirable, little one, but misplaced. So Storm sends Kitty off to scout to see if there are any other attackers or who may have sent these attackers. Well, meanwhile, Colossus easily hurls this guy off of him. And then cut to our first really good shot of the Morlocks assembled. Here we have Callisto, Plague, Mosk, and Sunder, the man who attacked Candy Southern earlier. Be patient, Mask. You'll get your chance. For the moment, we wait and watch to learn what their powers are and how they use them. So Callisto, a bit of a tactician, the leader of the Morlocks. She has superhuman senses and some other ill-defined mutant powers. Ascent, girl, young, clean, outsider. So Kitty is spying on them. She sees them, and Callisto detects her with her superhuman sense of smell, sends Plague after her, but Kitty is immaterial. That's her ability, is to phase through objects. So she phases through Plague's attack, but thinks that my arm, I was phasing, but it tingled when that old lady passed through me. What did she do to it? So here we have Kitty sensing that something might be amiss, but she escapes anyway. Sunder, in an awesome display of his superhuman strength, smashes through the wall that Kitty phases through, but Callisto chides him. And what will you do if you catch her, O grand and glorious lummox? If she can walk through walls, your fists won't do her much damage. Let her run. She won't get far. If a single molecule of the disease Plague manifested remains on the girl's person when she solidifies, she's as good as dead. Meanwhile, the battle goes well for the X-Men so far. Nightcrawler taking these two out with his patented super agile fighting style. Storm sweeping these guys away with a hurricane force wind, and we saw what Colossus was able to do earlier. Now the battle's over. Where's Kitty? They're wondering. They sent her to scout, but she's nowhere to be found. Colossus wants to look for her, but Aurora wants to stick to the original plan of finding Angel. She is the leader of the X-Men at this point. Cyclops is gone, so she is growing into that role and realizing that being the leader requires making really hard choices, and that is leaving Kitty to continue to search for Angel, and the other two aren't too happy about it. Nightcrawler remarks, Storm, we're badly outnumbered. Might reinforcements not be as advisable? How do we summon them? Our psionic and radio links with Professor Xavier are being jammed, and if we retreat to the surface, assuming that is even possible, what then happens to our friends? Finally, Kurt, who do we summon? X-Men are few and far between. Well, you could call the Beast. He is, at this point, still a member of the Avengers, I think, or maybe just recently departed from the Avengers to the Defenders. Anyway, they don't choose that option. They keep climbing down. And another sort of miniature version of the Paul Smith long panel here, we get to see them descending this ladder. And again, these sorts of panels do a really great job of illustrating the idea of depth and just how far the X-Men continue to descend into this hellish underworld that the Morlocks call their home. Meanwhile, Kitty comes back to the scene of the fight, and no one is there. Guys, I'm afraid. I don't feel so good. And then we see this weirdly Phantom of the Opera looking cloaked figure, Sprite Child. And dressed all in rags, he goes and rescues Kitty. And we're about to see that this is someone we've met before in the pages of the X-Men, though it was a while ago. He carries her away tenderly. He seems to know her. Meanwhile, the X-Men have descended perhaps as far as they can. By the White Wolf, that patented phrase that we've gotten so used to from Colossus by this time. A tunnel, and that's really great to see the way Smith and Wycheck render the alley, which is the abandoned rail line and tunnel that is one of the main meeting places of the Morlocks underground. It's darkened, but suddenly we see these lights are coming on, blinding the X-Men, and a rail car rolls forward, previously unseen. I am Storm, leader of the X-Men. We come in peace, seeking a friend. You mean Angel? Then you're in luck. Here he is. So the rail car rolls forward, and boom, we get another patented Paul Smith long panel, and this one is a doozy. We see Callisto holding an imprisoned Angel, dressed only in a loincloth, and he is kind of spiked out on this weird throne slash dais with pillows, and he's on his knees. It's just, he's obviously a prisoner, obviously not in good shape. And Callisto is holding something in her hand, which we'll see in a second. And we get, on this page, two amazing Paul Smith long panels for the price of one. Pretty amazing here. Colossus, who's I think 7.5 feet tall in his armored form, 6'6" in his human form, just towers over Storm and Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is usually in a perpetual crouch, so he's lower. And Storm is a tall woman, probably 6 feet tall. So it's a great show of position there and size and scale. As for why angels here, every princess must have a prince. And for me, who more fitting than the most beautiful man in all the world, Callisto says as she grabs Angel by the hair. She did such a thing out of love, Colossus asks. And here on this next page, we see Callisto is grabbing Angel's pin feathers, and she slices them with what she had in her hand, which was a switchblade. She's clipping Angel's pin feathers. Without them, he's crippled. He cannot fly. You two free him. I'll deal with his lady captor. So the X-Men spring into action. Nightcrawler teleports over and engages Callisto in hand-to-hand. Callisto screams, "Morlocks, to me!" And suddenly, in this awesome panel, which really just shows dynamic motion and action, this horde of Morlocks sweeps forward in extremely colorful, raggy garb, and they sweep Nightcrawler away from Callisto as she orders it. It's almost like a tide of humanity, Morlock humanity. Storm confidently takes to the air, thinking she'll disperse them with some well-placed lightning bolts, not yet realizing that what they're dealing with here is a community of mutants who also have powers. But Callisto, showing her fighting ability, may not possess any ranged mutant powers, but she has this cool slingshot which she uses, and with a ball bearing or a BB, and hits Aurora in the head, knocking her down. And in this tremendous panel, which is awesome, the way it we have that Paul Smith classic long panel here, and then a second tiny, skinny long panel with a tiny figure of Aurora plummeting to the ground right next to it. Just brilliant page layout there and design. And here's where the underestimation really comes in. Colossus thinks he should be taking these guys out. They're just a bunch of ragamuffins. I am pulling my punches. I do not wish to cause these unfortunates any injury. But it doesn't matter because there are obviously mutants among them. And they overwhelm Colossus and take him out. Flip back to Kitty. What's happened to Kitty? Who did rescue her? We're about to find out. She wakes up here in a comfortable bed, relatively speaking, for being in a sewer. She is violently ill because Plague's sickness is still upon her. She vomits and tries to get out of bed afterward. And she's dressed in a what looks like an old dress. She moves forward and she hears the voice of her rescuer. Sprite Child, you should not be on your feet. That voice, I know it, but can't remember. So hard to think, so dizzy. Floor won't stand still. She calls out Aurora's name and goes down in a faint. But this individual comes over and catches her. And who is it? It is Caliban, the weird ragamuffin mutant that the X-Men met in X-Men 148, which guest starred Spider-Woman. So he is back. And we have found actually his community are the Morlocks. So his connection to them and what he can do to save Kitty and the X-Men will be explored in the following issue, X-Men 170, or in this case, Classic X-Men 74. Here is our original cover. 60 cents was the price tag. Just a pittance for me to pay out of my grass cutting money because I read this book to tatters when I bought it. It was just tremendous, and it really was like a face that launched 1,000 ships for me in terms of my X-Men fandom. Tremendously designed cover by Paul Smith. Not only is he a great layout artist, he was a fantastic cover artist. This angel fallen is the tagline, and we can see a version of the scene that we saw earlier in this story, except Angel is in his classic blue and white costume, which is probably my favorite Angel costume of all. He's had many over the years. And here we see the Paul Smith floating heads, since he is now the new regular X-Men artist as of issue 166. So that was Classic X-Men 73, reprinting X-Men 169 by Chris Claremont, Paul Smith, and Bob Wycheck. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll bring you more later. Take care.